throwing tons of orbiting hammers with bolts of lightning raining down from the sky and obliterating anything that stands in your way. This is the Smite Hammerdin. The Smite Hammerpaladin build is fast, really efficient at clearing packs of enemies, and has some awesome visual effects. The general playstyle is spamming hammer throw to have a constant flow of hammers orbiting around you. The hammers will be proccing Smite when they hit an enemy, and Smite will be our main source of damage. So the faster you can throw hammers, the better. We use lunge movement ability to dive bomb into the next pack and bring our hammers with us for a big burst of damage on Smite procs. This is also a low mana build. The closer you are to 0 mana, the more damage you are going to deal. With that being said, here are the required items for the build to work. First of all, you need specific idols in order to start using this build. The Adorned Rhea idols, and they take up 4 slots each, allowing you to equip up to 4 of these at once. Each idol gives you a chance to cast Smite when you hit with throwing attacks, which is what makes this build possible. Up to 36% chance to proc Smite on hit with 4 idols slotted in. Head over to your loot filter and make sure you select the Adorned Rhea idols to stand out. That way you don't miss one when it drops. Then we also have 3 unique items needed for the build: Devotion, Kolnavar's Scepter, and the Storm Carved Relic. Starting with Devotion, an amulet that gives flat spell damage per 5 missing mana. So the more maximum mana you have and the closer you are to having no mana, the more damage you are going to deal. The amulet makes this a low mana build for the highest damage possible. You can target farm the Devotion amulet in the Age of Winter timeline. Next is Kolnavar's Claim. This scepter helps keep our mana low by converting it all to ward when we reach full mana, as well as providing a good amount of scaling for Smite with the lightning spell damage and crit chance. But you can also find some powerful rare or exalted scepters that will also work good, until you find this unique with legendary potential. You can target farm the Kolnavar's Claim in the Stolen Lance timeline. The last unique used in this build is the Storm Carved Testament Relic. The lightning penetration, flat mana, and attunement is what makes this relic a must-have for this build. Chance to shock will also help shred some lightning resistance. You can target farm this relic by killing Lagon, the final boss of Ending the Storm timeline. I will simplify the stats you want on gear by splitting them into 2 categories: damage stats and defensive stats. Starting with the damage stats, you will want to focus on attunement, flat mana, and percent mana increases, spell damage and lightning damage, as well as throwing attack speed. As for the defensive stats, you will need health, health regen, tons of armor, block chance and block effectiveness, as well as endurance cap at 60% and increases to endurance threshold. Finally, make sure to get resistances wherever possible on your gear. For this segment, I will showcase what stats to go for on each piece of gear, starting with the helmet. You will need increases to health and health regen per second, as well as an increase to mana and attunement, a stat that gives a small amount of mana and scales with Smite for more damage. For the shield, you want block chance and block effectiveness, flat health and percent increased armor or endurance. On the belt, you want increased mana regeneration, lightning damage and leech, more health and endurance or health regen. I'm still looking for the god roll myself, so I'm just using lightning damage for now. Bracers are going to need crit chance or throwing attack speed with mana, health regen, and more health. For the boots, you want movement speed and attunement, as well as double health regen for the suffixes. The rings are important and depend on the amount of mana you currently use up when throwing hammers. The goal is to not be losing or gaining mana while using hammer throw. That way you can maintain the low mana required for the most damage in this build. This is achieved with the reduced mana cost for throwing skills affix. Depending on how much attack speed you have, you will either need this on one ring or both rings. This only needs to be tier 1 since the mana cost does not change when upgraded. So you can use a Glyph of Sealing on this affix and then fill the prefixes with spell damage and throwing attack speed, and whatever resistances you are lacking on the suffixes. Now let's cover the passive skills. We will choose the Paladin Mastery here for increased lightning damage and healing effectiveness with attunement, as well as the Mastery skill Holy Aura, which is an insanely good offensive and defensive skill that works as a passive buff as well. As for the passives we choose, starting with the Sentinel tree, we will go 8 points into Fearless, 1 point into Stalwart for 3% block chance, 5 into Armor Clad, and we max out Relentless for a ton of damage and stun avoidance. Over in the Paladin tree, we are going to want 8 points into Conviction for increased lightning damage and lightning penetration, 6 into Defiance, 1 into Honor for 2% block chance, and 10 points into Heavenfire. Heavenfire is a huge damage boost with the 30 flat spell damage. We then go 1 point into Valor, and we max out Blinding Light. This will give us a bunch of endurance as well as the chance to blind on hit, which halves the critical strike chance of the enemy and they will have a less chance of hitting us. Next, we move on to the Faith Armor. We put 8 points into here, 8 points into Sanctuary Guardian, and 1 point into Shield Wall, and then 10 points into Holy Precision. This is going to give us a ton of spell crit chance as well as a bunch of crit multiplier. And over at the end, we pick up Reverence of Duality, and that finishes out the Paladin tree. Over in Forge Guard, I just threw 1 point here for the 2% block chance. And in the Void Knight tree, we go 10 points into Abyssal Endurance for a ton of defensives, and 5 points into Dark Maw, which is just going to make it a little bit easier to zoom through the maps and heal as we're killing things. If you don't feel that you need Dark Maw, you can put those 5 points somewhere else in the Paladin tree. Holy Icon is pretty good, or even dumping them into Valor for some extra health. And now for the active skills. We specialize in Hammer Throw, Smite, Holy Aura, Sigils of Hope, and Lunge. Hammer Throw is mainly used to proc Smite and gives us global buffs with Zeal to increase the damage of Smite further. We first go up here to grab some projectile speed, chance to deal double damage, and this gets cancelled out when we pick Hammer Vortex, allowing the hammers to orbit around us as we're moving around. Then we pick up 2 points into Catapult for some extra projectiles, 1 point into Avatar of the Spire to double those extra projectiles, and then 5 points into Ballista for reduced mana costs. The damage is not really going to affect us at all because our Hammer Throw isn't going to be dealing the damage. We also grab 5 points into Rapid Throw for 25% attack speed. Over in the Smite tree, Smite is going to be our main source of damage, and we won't even need this skill on the action bar once we have the specific idols to proc Smite with the hammers. Stacking crit chance and multiplier adds a ton of damage as well. Starting off, we put 2 points into Blinding Flash, so we can come down here and pick up Sacrifice for a huge 250% damage boost. We then put 5 points into Atonement so that we can take away the health sacrifice that node costs, and 3 points into Deep Impact, and 1 point into Conviction. These can be pretty interchanged depending on the crit chance you have or the multiplier. If you need more multiplier, you can max this out instead, or crit chance, you can put more points into here. Up at the top, we grab Piety so that we can get down to Order of Lagon and convert Smite to Lightning. 1 point into Unbalanced Scale so that we get a little bit more AoE with Smite, and that polishes off the Smite tree. Holy Aura is the mastery skill for the Paladin, and it gives a ton of defensive and offensive stats passively, but we can also activate it to double the buffs for burst windows. We start off by getting 4 points into Vital Boon for extra health regen, and 1 point into Purification. The poison resistance is not so important, it's more so the cleansing of the ailments. You can activate this at any time to basically cleanse any ailments you have on you, ignite, chill, whatever's on you. 2 points into Shelter from the Storm, 2 points into Call to Arms, so that we can get Strength from Afar and go into Expedite for throwing attack speed and haste on hit. We grab 3 points into Fanaticism for more attack speed, and then 3 points into True Strike for some crit chance. Sigils of Hope is our next skill, and this is necessary to help maintain our low mana, as we can spam this skill to dump our mana quickly, and once we get to a low mana, that's when we can start spamming our hammers and just activate another sigil if you need to drop some more mana. This will give us a ton of healing and damage similar to Holy Aura. 5 points into Empowering Sigils for 25% more damage per sigil. 1 point into Last Wish so that we can summon this on kill. 2 points into Alacrity so that we can get 1 point into Exigency. This will allow it to be an instant cast and increases the mana cost, which is good for us. 4 points into Iron Sigils gives us Endurance Threshold. 5 points into Enduring Hope for a longer duration. 1 point into Tetragram for an extra sigil, and 1 point into Meditation for the double health regen. Finally, we spec into Lunge, and this is our primary movement ability, which is also used to proc Smite. It will also bring the Orbiting Hammers to the next pack quickly. We'll grab 1 point into Warrior's Renewal, 2 points into Onslaught, 3 points into Cull the Weak so that we can kill things as soon as we lunge to them if they're under 15% health, and 4 points into Holy Incursion so that we can always get a Smite proc when we lunge in. 3 points into Reckless Skirmish also gives us Frenzy when we proc the Cull the Weak. 1 into Dawn Charge, and then 3 into Juggernaut for extra block chance, and 2 into Embuscade, 1 into Double Strike for the extra charge. And now, since we don't need Smite on the action bar because we never have to cast it directly, we can use Volatile Reversal instead as a sort of holy shit button. Right before you're about to die, you can use this to revert back to where you were 2 seconds ago, including the health and mana you had at the time. That concludes the Smite Hammerden build guide. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video and be sure to check out some of my other guides as well. Thanks for chilling, I'm Manarith, and I'll be back. Peace.